I have been in a 4-week teaching series that's titled Thriving Together. And today is the 4th week, but we're focusing on the word thrive this year as a congregation. My topic today is the very title of the series, Thriving Together. When we think about thriving together or thriving relationally, it doesn't happen by accident. It must be a deliberate choice for you to thrive, whether you're married, thrive in your marriage, thrive in your relationship with your children, thrive in your relationship with your parents, thrive with your colleagues at work, thrive even with your classmates at school. It has to be something you intentionally plan to do. May I offer you a definition of the word thriving? Thriving means achieving a state of mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health, where individuals can handle life's challenges with resilience, adapt to change, and continuously seek personal growth holistically. In other words, we acknowledge the fact that all of us will have problems at one point or another in our lives. All of us will experience setbacks. That's not the issue. The issue is, can you bounce back? The issue is, how well do you move forward? The issue is, can you allow that situation to be a platform that you can be catapulted into the next level of mental health? One of the central missions of the ministry of Jesus was to help people build thriving lives. In fact, here's what Jesus said in John chapter 10 and verse 10. A thief comes only to rob, kill, and destroy. I came so everyone would have life and have it fully. So could you imagine Jesus said, the reason why I came to the earth was not to make you religious, was not to make you some robot, some religious automaton. No, Jesus said, that's not why I came. Why I came was to give you life. That word life there in the Greek language, which the New Testament was written in, is the Greek word zoe, Z-O-E, where we get the English word, the God kind of life. Jesus said, I came to give you the God kind of life. Now realize this, you can't have the God kind of life, the full life, the thriving life, the flourishing life, the life that blossoms. You can't have the God kind of life without God. See, some people want all of Jesus' stuff, but they don't want Jesus. It's like some people want your stuff, but they don't want you. You can't have my stuff without me. I come with my stuff. And Jesus comes with his stuff. Are you with me? And so the idea is that if you want the God kind of life, the life that flourishes and blossoms, then you got to want God. And if you don't have Jesus in your life, I'm going to walk you through a process. In fact, I'll pray with you at the end of my teaching so you can be able to open your life to Jesus and he can walk right in. And he doesn't walk in to force you to be anything other than God's best for you. He washes away your sins, changes you, and you will start to experience the God kind of life with God in your life. Now, when you think about the God kind of life, the flourishing life, take a look at this plant. On the left side, the plant is dry, it's dull, its leaves look like they're burnt, it lacks luster. But if you look on the right side, the same plant, it's green, it's picturesque, it's lush. Why? It's thriving. In other words, you are created to thrive just like you see that plant on the right thriving. Your relationships were not designed to wilt. Your relationships were designed for them to flourish, just like you see the plant on the right. Jesus placed a high value on building and maintaining healthy, thriving relationships. Over the next few moments, I want you to travel with me to the home of two adult sisters that lived together. In Luke chapter 10, you're going to be introduced to Martha and Mary. But when you walk into the home, I must warn you, there's tension in the air. Things are not going well. There's some relational angst. And Jesus is going to be invited to help them resolve the conflict. Why? That they may learn how to thrive together. Luke 10, verse 38, Scripture says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now, I want you to go with me to the home of Martha and Mary. Jesus, he's walking on what's referred to as the Transjordan Road, main road. You can almost see this. Imagine in your mind's eye, when you see someone famous, Jesus is a rock star. And he's walking through the village. John 11 says they lived in a village called Bethany. Bethany was right along that Transjordan path. Mary and Martha and all the villagers, they came out of their homes and they're watching Jesus. That's Jesus. But Jesus knew Martha and Mary because we read in John 11 that Lazarus was the brother of Martha and Mary. Lazarus was the guy that Jesus rose from the dead. So they knew him. Mary must have yelled out, Martha, hey, Jesus! Jesus, good to see you. Martha says, Jesus, come on over to the house. Come on. Get some meal, get food, rest yourself. Now, it's so important to do that because this is not like in our day, you can hang out at the Marriott, go to the Starbucks and just sit down and just chill for a while. No. When you're in these remote areas, the only place you can go to someone's home. Last August, I, along with a small team a ministry team, we went to Uganda. And we were in this part of Uganda that was very rural. I'm talking about no running water, bathroom, there's an outhouse, a commode, a hole in the ground. And so during lunchtime, one family that had their main house in the capital, Kampala, some 2-3 hours away, they had their vacation house in the village where we were, and so they donated the use of their vacation house. Running water, everything looked posh, it looked like you're here in the States, and so nice brick house, nice lawn, everything. They said, you guys, they said to the host, bring your ministry team, let them hang out at the house. We'll have food for them, everything's fine, they want to rest themselves, charge up their electronic devices, all of that stuff. So we took advantage of that. We're there. There's nobody to there's nobody that said, hey, can you give me some wisdom? No, I'm tired. No wisdom. Nobody's asking for counsel. None of those things. We're sitting there just enjoying ourselves. That's what Jesus needed. So Martha said, hey, Jesus, come over to the house. Jesus and his ministry team, his disciples, they're going. They get in the house. Now, I must say to you, I'm nosy. And I hope you're the same. Let's tag along, and maybe Jesus has a +2. You and me, we're going in. And as soon as Jesus walks in, the disciples walk behind him. Here you are. We sneak in, and they close the door. And let's stand by the door. Why? So we can see through the hallway into the kitchen where Martha's going to be preparing food. And we can also see where Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus listening. And we can listen to the wisdom coming out of Jesus' mouth. We got good spots to stand. Stay there. Watch. Tension occurs. Martha storms into the room in front of everybody. Jesus, tell my sister, come on, help me. Don't sit here. I'm doing all the work. She's doing that in front of the guest. You don't do that in front of the guest. But Martha's so incensed. So there's tension, and we're watching this. We're just checking it out. And all of a sudden, school's in. See, in Middle Eastern society in the first century, It was more of a communal living in style. Sometimes 3 generations lived under the same roof, grandparents, parents, and children. Here, these 2 adult sisters are living together. Wasn't odd? And here we find that Jesus is now brought into this difficulty to try to work it out, to give them some type of pathway to thriving. It's a reality that most of us, maybe that's a strong word, many of us, before we came to know Christ, we came from families of origin that was very dysfunctional. We didn't know about how to have peaceful relationships. We just knew about who to yell the loudest. And so it wasn't emotionally healthy and thriving families that many of us came from. We came from dysfunctional families. The question was, whose family was most dysfunctional? Yours or your wife's? So when we accepted Christ as Savior, we almost have to say, let's learn how to do family. Let's learn how to do relationship the way Jesus would. So all of a sudden, now Martha storms in. And Jesus tells her, wait a moment, Martha. Let's sort this out. And I want to give you 3 principles that Jesus gave Martha to help her work through her issues so she can thrive with her sister Mary and thrive together. First, find differences to celebrate. Thriving relationships develop when you find differences to celebrate. In other words, thriving relationships don't automatically happen. They don't automatically emerge. They don't, and some people, you're looking for the perfect person. You won't find that perfect person. You're looking for the perfect man, you single woman, perfect guy. You're looking for Fabio. There is no perfect Fabio. Flawed Fabio, broken Fabio. And Fabio's looking for the perfect wife. There is no perfect one. You make relationships healthy. You don't find a perfect marriage. You find a healthy one. You can find a thriving one. And so we tend to value difference in a good-bad binary. We tend to think about better versus lesser. That's the way we contrast difference. And that's not what we're called to do. And Jesus wasn't picking sides and Martha's right, Mary is wrong. It wasn't that at all. What Jesus was trying to help Martha understand, Martha, find and celebrate the difference between you and Mary. You're very different. See, difference is a fork is different than a knife. Both are utensils, but you can't get angry at the fork. When are you going to start cutting things? And you can't get angry at the knife. When are you going to start picking things up? You're a waste. No, they are both utensils, but very different from one another. Valuing difference is placing things into 2 distinct categories because that's where they belong. It was anonymously stated, a healthy relationship is one where 2 independent people just make a deal that they will help make the other person the best version of themselves. And that's what you need to do in your family. That person that's different than you, make a deal with them that I'm going to help you make and help you become the best version of you. I want you to see what Jesus was helping Martha to understand, how to be able to celebrate their difference. Because Martha and Mary, these 2 adult sisters, they were very different. And I know sometimes for many of us who have walked with Christ for many years, we've read the Bible and we've read about Martha and Mary, we tend to demonize Martha. Oh, Martha. Man, look at her. No spiritual sensitivity, nothing. I don't want to be Martha. And if your name, your birth name given to you by your parents was Martha, you want to change it and you want to quote Shakespeare, me protest. I'm changing my name from Martha to whatever. But I want you to know that you shouldn't look at it that way. Celebrate difference. Martha was the social catalyst. Since she invited Jesus to the home, Mary was a social participant. See, many of us, we always say things like, how come I don't get invited to a party? Why don't you throw a party? See, Martha was the one who threw the party. Mary was the one who says, oh, I'm living here. I'm going to enjoy Jesus. She didn't throw the party. She was just a recipient of the party. Martha was environment focused. Mary was people focused. See, Martha focused on Jesus' comfort. Mary focused on Jesus' counsel. And what Jesus did, he found ways and reasons to celebrate their differences. He didn't pick sides. He recognized that Martha had a lot of things in which she was very, very good at, but that difference between her and Mary was to be celebrated, not demonized, not thrown to the wayside. Martha was practical minded. Mary was spiritual minded. There's a time and place for both. You can't recharge. Some people can't recharge with clutter and difficulty, but both must be valued. Martha was aware of a problem, while Mary was unaware of the problem of the preparation. She just plopped herself down in front of Jesus. There's no DoorDash. There's no Papa John's. You can't call for someone to deliver food. This is first century. You got to cook the food. But yet, I want you to see that the difference between these women are very stark, but one is not better than the other. They're just different. And what Jesus was advocating for Martha was for her to understand the differences between her and her sister and celebrate that. Martha was engaged in doing. Mary was engaged in being. There's a time and place for both, but both are necessary. I want you to see that there are people in your family and in your life that if you would just reframe your perspective to see that difference is not bad, but difference is complementary, and difference has benefits. And if you can learn to celebrate the difference, oh my Lord, you would be able to bring your relationship to a whole nother level. We must see, just like a light bulb is not a lamp, they need each other. And they serve different purposes. They operate differently. And yet, when they operate in tandem with one another, it is amazing of how their differences are celebrated. And so Martha, Jesus was helping her to see that she's worried and upset about things that are unnecessary at this point. Enjoy the company. And Martha, you're focusing on my comfort, but please don't ignore that Mary is focusing on my counsel. And both are necessary. You're being very practical. She's being very spiritual. Don't force me to choose one from the other or separate the two values, because they both are valued. I love what Stephen Covey said. Strength lies in differences, not in similarities. And when you find emotionally healthy relationships, they require you to constantly find and celebrate the difference. Find and celebrate it. I remember years ago, my wife and I were invited to this family's home for a dinner, and after dinner they said, let's play this board game. And the board game was made up with, it had a lot of words, you trying to come up with words and answers to questions. Man, rub my hands together. I mean, I'm one of those readers and bookworms and nerds. And so, and they separated us. My wife's on one team, I'm on another. Man, my team was winning. And all of a sudden, the category shifted to music and artists and songs. Man, I was a loser. You didn't want me on your team. I had no answer. And my wife was just boom, answer, boom, answer, boom, answer. I'm looking at her saying, why can't you be on my team? The idea is that we need to realize that differences. See, I'm one of those guys, I'm not listening to music. I'm not listening, I don't know the artists. I don't know the songs. But yet, when I realized, hey, the difference and the celebration of the difference, I wish I had known the artists and the songs. So my point to you is that our differences should not separate us. Our differences should unite us. And in your home and among your relationship, you want your relationship to thrive? Celebrate the differences. This high school basketball coach did something very unique every year. He created this JV team, junior varsity. And he had the JV team play a basketball game against the varsity team. Here's the clincher. Varsity team, they're bigger, they're more experienced, been playing for years on high school. And so what he did was he changed the function and the position of each of the varsity players. So the tallest guy on the team, the center, he became a guard. The power forward became the center. He moved the players around. And so when they played against the JV team, smaller, shorter, less experienced as a team, the JV team won every single year. Afterwards, he had a little powwow, a little talk with the teams. And the varsity team, their heads are hung low. Man, JV beat us. We're scrubs. We stink. The coach says, no, I just want you to see that if you are not in your right position, the team will not be dominant and be effective. What I want you to learn, players, is this. Celebrate your differences, because your differences will help you during game time. Same thing holds true in relationships. You need to celebrate the difference between you and your husband, you and your children, you and your parents, you and your friend. You're different. But one's a fork, one's a spoon. One's a knife, one's a fork. And if you can learn to value that, you're on your way to having a thriving relationship and thriving together. So I want you to see that what Jesus was conveying to Martha is this: find differences to celebrate. May I offer you a second counsel that we see in the text? Find room to forgive. Forgiveness is a bridge that repairs your relational pathway to staying connected. If you're going to major in an area that is going to make you a success in a relationship, I would say to you, major in forgiveness. You need to have your Ph.D. in forgiveness. You may say, well, Ph.D. in forgiveness? Yeah, you need to know how to forgive, how to be able to move forward, how to put offenses behind you, how to be able to advance, because there are no perfect relationships, and someone's going to offend you. And if someone doesn't offend you, it means that you're not with anyone. Forgiveness is the application of God's medicine to the pain within your soul. And to have thriving relationships, you have to find room to forgive. Forgive means to let go of the offense, to release the offense, either from your friend, your colleague, your spouse, or your family member. I want you to see what Jesus said in Matthew 18 about this topic. Verse 21. Peter came up to the Lord and asked, how many times should I forgive someone who does something wrong to me? Is 7 times enough? Jesus answered, not just 7 times, but 77 times. 77 times. See, first century rabbis or first century teachers, they taught that a brother might be forgiven a repeated sin 3 times. That person did that thing to you 3 times, forgive them. 1, 2, 3 times. On the 4th occasion, no forgiveness. So Peter now, he's armed with that rabbinic knowledge, and he comes to Jesus now because the rabbis were teaching the Old Testament practices, and now Peter is introducing grace, so he says to Jesus, hey, Jesus, Lord, how many times should I forgive someone who does the same thing to me? Then he answers his question, up to 7 times? Jesus says back, no, up to 77 times. 77 times for the same thing. Now, Jesus, when he used that term 77 times, he wasn't looking at it in a literal sense. He's using what's referred to as a rabbinic hyperbole, an exaggeration to make a point. That guy was so tall, when he walked into the room, his head was hitting the ceiling. He's not that tall, but I'm exaggerating to make a point. Jesus was telling Peter, when it comes to the interpersonal relationships and offenses that you experience, when it comes to you practicing forgiveness in order to be able to make sure healing occurs in a relationship, you stay connected emotionally, it can flourish and thrive. Jesus says, be willing to forgive up to 77 times. Peter said 77 times. That 77 wasn't just static 77. No, it's 77 times 7. 539 times? No, it's 77 times 7 times 7. 3,773 times? No. It's 77 times 7 times 7 times 7. 26,411 times? Don't ask me again because I have to multiply by another 7. The idea is this, that you have to see that what Jesus is advocating is that, hey, you got to learn how to find room in your heart to forgive. See, show the person an infinite amount of mercy and forgiveness. That was his point. See, forgiveness removes the relational dirt and the rocks out of the relationship so you can stay emotionally connected. If you don't know how to do that, you're going to find yourself jumping from one relationship to another, and you may say, well, that kid, I don't like that kid, but I like this kid. And you may adopt the neighbor's kid. I like that kid. Can we switch kids? I mean, you're getting to a place because you got to see this forgiveness thing is so real. And anger is one of the easiest emotions to cultivate and nurture. You just stew at it. You don't even need to think about it. But when you think about it, you just pile on more anger. Martha had to simply forgive. See, Mary was not acting in an unkind manner. There was no evil, there was no immoral act, there was no unethical intent behind her actions. Could it be that Mary needed to sit at Jesus' feet because of her mental health? Could it be that Martha just needed to just cut her some slack? That Martha just needed to be more accommodating and just to be encouraging and to just let go of what's going on, this flawed perspective. When Peter asked Jesus, should I forgive up to 7 times? Let me tell you what happened as Peter grew in his walk with the Lord. Years later, when Peter was writing 1 Peter 4, verse 8, listen to what he says. Most importantly, love each other deeply, because love will cause people to forgive each other for many sins. So Peter learned. Peter is saying that the glue to hold loving relationships together is forgiveness. The glue to be able to help you grow in your relationship with your children is forgiveness. The glue to help you grow in your relationship with your spiritual brothers and sisters, forgiveness. The glue to help you grow in your relationship with your spouse is forgiveness. And so what Jesus was helping Martha to understand is, Martha, find room in your heart to forgive Mary of what you think she did by her lack of helping you, so you can be able to have a thriving relationship. See, forgiveness allows you to look at Mary through eyes that are pure and eyes that are inviting. See, forgiveness is so important. That's why it was anonymously stated, healthy families are not perfect. They just make room for the imperfections. And I wonder if you can make room for imperfections in your family. Oh yes, your family member is imperfect, but that's okay. So are you. And if you want them to make room for your imperfections, you need to make room for their imperfections. And what Jesus is teaching us as we see this interaction between Martha and Mary and Martha and Jesus and the dynamics going on in the home, Jesus was teaching us is find differences to celebrate. Find room to forgive. May I offer you this third point? Find moments to laugh. Thriving relationships require laughter. It requires you to move beyond just forgiveness and find moments in which you can laugh. Laughter has a medicinal and therapeutic effect on the human soul. In fact, in Proverbs 17, verse 22, Scripture says, a joyful heart is good medicine, but depression drains one's strength. So this laughter thing is so important. I know that in my own marriage, in my own family, laughter comes out. It comes out at critical moments to help, bring a reduction of tension. I remember my wife was angry at me for something I may have said. And then all of a sudden, I just remember this line from The Gladiator. When Russell Crowe says, "Have I not entertained you?" And so I then used this voice. I said, "Have I not entertained you?" And then she starts laughing and breaking down laughter because she's saying, "This guy's crazy. What are you?" And it redirected our emotions. There are a lot of academic research that talks about the value of laughter in interpersonal relationships. There was a 2022 study in August August version of the Current Psychology Journal. And it talks about how that shared laughter, it causes the relationships to become more positive. And when there's an increased frequency of shared laughter in relationships, I'm not talking about where you're mocking someone. I'm not talking about where you're just being silly and ridiculing anybody. I'm talking about not smiling, because the academics made a distinction between smiling and laughing. Voice, sounds emerging from your mouth. They said that what laughter does is that it helps you to self-regulate your emotions. So instead of taking the conversation down this negative path, when you laugh, and laughter, it redirects the conversation because it gave you just a few moments to self-regulate, and you go into this direction. There was a time I remember when I said something to my wife. I don't even remember what I said. And my wife, to give you perspective, she's the worship and creative arts pastor, so she's a musician, she's a singer. And so she just threw out this line. She started singing when I said something mean. She quoted something from the Disney movie, The Grinch. She says, "He's a mean one." And she just started singing. And then all of a sudden, as she brings out this song, and then it just broke the air, broke the atmosphere, because it just redirected our emotions. And I said, "You cracked too hard, because I can't sing. I can't remember singing lines." But it just caused our emotions to be regulated so we can go down a path that was healthy. I want you to see that here in Luke 10, we don't see laughter. But what we do see is Jesus' counsel to help Martha redirect and to self-regulate her emotions. Let me reread that passage of Scripture to you, this time from the Living Bible. Luke 10, verse 38 says, "As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a village where a woman named Martha welcomed them into her home. Her sister Mary sat on the floor listening to Jesus as he talked. But Martha was the jittery type and was worrying over the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, 'Sir, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me.' But the Lord said to her, 'Martha, dear friend, you're so upset over all these details. There is really only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and I won't take it away from her.'" Now, could you imagine now, as Martha hears that, something is being adjusted inside of her. Now, I want to put on my sanctified imagination. I wonder if Martha asked herself some self-regulating questions to help adjust her emotions as she returned to finish up the meal. Did Martha say, "If Mary and I were to laugh about this later, what would we say about how I handled the situation?" It's that kind of question that causes you to, let me adjust. Here's another question. Maybe Martha posed this question to herself. What's something humorous or lighthearted I can find in this situation that doesn't undermine its seriousness? Here's a third question. If I were telling a close friend about this moment, what might I laugh about later? I mean, many of us, we've done that. You've told someone about something that when you were in it, must have been angry or upset. And then when you start telling it, you start bringing out, you just seen that person's face. They scrunched up their face. They said this to me. I've overheard my wife when she tells someone about something, she said, "Yeah, when I said that, the Jamaican in him came out." And she brought out my Jamaican heritage now because, I don't know, maybe an accent on certain words or the pace of my voice or something along that line. But now it's comedic, and now it's funny, and now it's whimsical, now it's lighthearted. I love what the Danish humorist and musician Victor Borg said. Laughter is the shortest distance between two people. When an offense can just widen the emotional gap between you and that loved one, you and that friend, laughter just brings that gap closer and closer together. I pray that you'd start using humor in your relationship. I pray that the funny bone in your life begins to become activated. I pray that you would build thriving relationships in your home, on the job, in your school, in the church. I pray that you would allow these differences to be celebrated, that you would find room to forgive, and that you would find moments to laugh. See, if you can't laugh now, you can't laugh then. And so God has given us this wonderful gift of laughter, this wonderful gift of forgiveness, this wonderful gift of difference. Let's use it to build thriving, flourishing relationships for His glory and our satisfaction.